Okay. Recorder is going, and we are focusing, thank you, on chapter 3. Okay, one of the first things to notice is that here's an outline of what is covered in the chapter, but my time in class is going to be focused on the areas that I've highlighted in green. So what do you do with the areas not highlighted in green? Ignore them. A, ignore them. B, look at them with one eye. Or C, look at them with both eyes and study them.
All the above.
All three?
All three.
All three eyes, or you ignore them and one eye and two eye all at the same time?
Well, you do it in a cycle.
Okay. I'm not following, but that's not too unusual. Okay. So we're going to be looking at adapting to life on land, focusing on water potential, soil plant to atmosphere continuum. We barely scratched the surface of this when we studied xylem conductance in botany. So we're going to take a little bit more of a context look at soil plant atmosphere. Under transpiration and control of water loss, this is, as you can imagine, going to be extremely important to the adaptability of organisms to their changing water environment, the resources that they need. So we're going to take some time looking at that. Strategies for coping with different water availability conditions, water use efficiency, whole plant adaptations to low water availability, physiological adaptations, anatomical and morphological adaptations under those categories. So I will be spending time on that. I do want you to glance at, take a look at least read and take notes on energy balance of leaves. The leaves part and the trade-off of the function of leaves as photosynthetic organs is going to be extremely important as we consider this, this topic. So, everybody with me? Very good. Then, the purpose is to examine evolutionary solutions to water loss and leaf or plant temperature. As you can imagine, that relates to how the plant is adapted to use water. Adaptations to environmental conditions through the evolution of fixed phenotypic characteristics in physiological, morphological, anatomy, life history, and other traits. Or phenotypic plasticity, changing responses to altering environments. Now, hang on just a second. That's a lot of words strung together there. So let's take a look at this together really quickly. Characteristics in physiology might mean you have to bring CO2 in, and physiologically, your interaction with carbon dioxide and metabolism of photosynthesis can then be made more efficient if you are a C4 or a CAM plant in harsh environments. If you're a C3 plant in the same environments, then you've got some physiological challenges, right? You're not quite as good at getting that CO2 in and hanging on to it and not letting water out. Morphological. Tell me what morphology is.
Structure.
Structure, exactly. It is the phenotype of a genotype, right? Morphology is what the plant looks like. Is it herbaceous or woody? Is it tall? Is it short? Is it broadleafed or narrow-leafed? Right? Morphology, all of those things that are different within the plant kingdom. Anatomy is above ground, below ground, roots, stems, leaves, the anatomical structures, right? Take the leaf apart and you've got palisade, parenchyma, right, the mesophyll regions inside. So the anatomy is literally the details of the morphology, right? So we've got I'm a tree or I'm a shrub, but tree and shrub have root stems and leaves. What's going on inside there? That's the anatomy. You draw it and you start labeling it. That's the anatomy. That's the details. Life history is you go through juvenile and adult stages. Adult stages in the plant kingdom usually means you're reproductively capable. Okay, you're in that stage where you're capable of making more of yourself. For some plants, that is an annual strategy, right? Seed germinates, plant grows, flowers, bees, reproduces, sets seeds, gone, parent dies, all in 1 year. Okay, life history strategies. If you are hanging around for a few years, you're not annual, you're perennial, exactly. Depending on your life history, you could also be around longer, but not quite as long as a perennial. We have some of the oldest living organisms on planet Earth that are plants. It's the Methuselah tree. That's bristlecone pine that's found in one of the deserts out west. I'll have to look it up to be absolutely certain. Thousands of years old. Thousands of years old, Methuselah tree. So you can live a long life, or you can live a couple of years, and that would be something like a biennial. Okay, and I think you will maybe remember me talking about biennials in botany and telling you that depending on where you live, biennials, which technically seed germinates, plant grows, and it lives and it photosynthesizes and makes itself all happy and makes food, and it usually sends a bunch of that food down to storage in the root. Okay. And then winter comes along, it's a seasonal thing. Winter comes along, the above ground portion shrivels up, dies back, but the root structure stays strong and has all the stored energy and materials. Next year, second year of the life history, shoots come up, new plant, all that energy that was from the previous year gets used to invest in flowering, reproduction, seeds, dispersal, etc. And sometimes true biennials means that in the second year after successful reproduction, the plant dies back and it's gone. If you're in Georgia, biennials are in a very conducive environment. It's very, winters here don't get very harsh. You don't have months and months of zero weather, okay? So around here, biennials can live for a while. Strategy-wise, that's really great if you're a biennial. You're technically a biennial, though you may appear to be a perennial, but it's not really perennial, right? Kind of thing. But if you are up north, biennials are biennials. Annuals are annuals, and perennials hang around for years, okay? So back up. Physiology, morphology, details of morphology is anatomy. Life history is how long do you spend in a juvenile stage? How long does it take you to get to a reproductive strategy? If you're perennial, it can take years. If you're an annual, days or weeks to get to reproductive adulthood, okay? And that's life history. And then other traits that can be just different adaptive strategies to the way that you avoid predation, perhaps. And predation in the plant kingdom is herbivory, getting eaten, right? So how do you avoid that? All other kinds of strategies. Now, all of that can be fixed as a phenotypic characteristic, right? That is to say, you are genetically programmed to be a perennial. So you're going to grow to set up a strong root system and then invest in the overstory biomass in order to be successful in feeding yourself and stabilizing your physical form, right? That's a fixed phenotype. But plants have this unusual capability in that they can be plastic in the way they go about doing things. Some plants can be shrubs, and some can actually develop into trees. An excellent example of that is a mesquite plant. In Texas, they are, let me see if I can get this right, trees. But mesquite plants can also be found, I'm trying to think where else they are. 2 different locations, one of them is Texas. Mesquite plants can be a shrub, low to the ground, kind of shrubby plant, or in another location, very same species could develop into a tree. Okay, different different outcomes, plastic response to changes in the environment. And it is the environment that determines which one of those is true. We'll take a little bit of a break in here, and I'll try to remember to look that up and make sure my comparison has a location. I know one of them is Texas. Let me think about what the other one is. So just the difference in the way that plants can respond to their form and function is an interesting ability in the plant kingdom. Okay. We also talked in botany about the way that evolutionarily we believe that organisms adapted to life on land. We believe that in the plant kingdom, organisms in the plant kingdom originated in aquatic systems. And we believe that there are species that indicate the starting point of the evolution of larger, more complex plants. When we did botany, we walked from algae in water to life on land. Now, the challenges of life on land mean you're no longer surrounded by water, so now you've got strategies on how to provide water for yourself. And we walked in botany from algae to life on land, started with bryophytes, right? Mosses, liverworts, remember those? Those guys are extremely small, low to the ground, recumbent is the word, low to the ground, and very small thickness. So water literally just bathes the cells from the environment, and they are extremely dependent on water for all their life functions, including reproduction, because they're sperm or flagellated. Remembering any of this? And so these are what we believe is the first instance of adaptations to life on land, the challenges of living on land. Imagine then that bryophytes don't get very far from wet areas, right? They really don't. They live in pretty wet areas. They can actually survive long periods of dryness and come back, but they're still dependent on wet areas. Getting a little bit taller and developing an underground system, we move from bryophytes to ferns and their allies, right? Isoetes, by the way, was one of the allies we talked about on Tuesday. So now we've gotten a little bit taller. That means we're not down in the wet. We're up a little bit higher in the column above the ground. And now we need to move water around. And that movement of water around comes with vascular tissue. So the very first place we see true vascular tissue is in ferns and fern allies, moving water and moving food around the plant. But not very complex, pretty simple ways of doing things because they don't get very tall. However, evolutionary timeline shows us that ferns were able to evolve from what we know now as, Christmas ferns and Boston ferns, those kinds of low plants that we see out there, to fern trees. In fact, in the tropics, we still have fern trees. Okay, they were everywhere in the era around the time of the dinosaurs. A lot of our petroleum reserves actually comes from ferns dying and getting buried, pressure creating geological reserves such as petroleum. Okay, not the dinosaurs. There weren't that many of them, and they die and they don't get buried as one whole dinosaur, and then you tap down in there and suck up all the petroleum from a dinosaur dying. It didn't work like that. It was the vegetation back in that era. Okay, so life on land transpired from going from non-vascular to vascular. Life on land also presented challenges on how to reproduce. You move from flagellated sperm to airborne or vector transmitted reproductive units. So on land, this coevolutionary association with the way you get pollinated changed, okay? And so we've got a wind and water